need help from the state of Ohio.
Better services, looking for better schools, and lower taxes.
We are in competition with other communities.
We're all joined at the hip.
It's not Cleveland competing against Akron.
We're not presenting that united front.
In 4 years from now, we've done some things regionally.
It's up to the people to correct the situation.
Throughout Northeast Ohio, thousands of citizens are working together to set a new course for Northeast Ohio's economy. This is your chance to let your voice be heard, to make your choice. The challenges are many: jobs, funding education, urban sprawl. Sometimes it's overwhelming, but once you boil it down to the major issues that face us, solutions begin to emerge. But which ones to choose? Well, that's where you come in. Hello, I'm Karen Kassler, the State House Bureau Chief for Ohio Public Radio and Television. And for the next half hour, we're going to focus not just on the problems, but on how we might solve them together. Television stations from throughout Northeast Ohio joined forces to produce this program. Their aim to get you involved in the search for answers. It all began with a program called Voices and Choices. In the past year and a half, over 20,000 people have weighed in on our region and how to revive our sluggish economy. Fox 8's Wayne Dawson introduces us to this unique project.
The loss of industry, the loss of good-paying jobs. A Central City recently ranked as one of the poorest in the nation. Underachieving school districts. Young minds fleeing our region. And the lack of any real cooperation between the city of Cleveland and its suburbs. This is the state of Northeast Ohio.
Need jobs, need housing.
People are talking, and for the first time, someone is listening. Welcome to the Nerve Center of Voices and Choices. Project Manager Shara Davis.
These are our organizers. These are the individuals that are out hitting the pavement.
Hitting the pavement, talking to citizens, what they like, what they don't like, and how to make our region better.
So if the grassroots have a framework to kind of guide what they need to do out there in the community.
This meeting of local leaders at Lorain Community College is an example of what's now happening in our area. 70 philanthropic foundations across Northeast Ohio have invested $3 million to fund the 18-month endeavor. Dave Abbott is the man in charge.
We're doing it by reaching out to people all over Northeast Ohio through town meetings that are big and small, through meetings in people's homes and churches, through opportunities for people to be interviewed one-on-one. One of our problems is that we're so fragmented. We've got so many municipalities in Northeast Ohio, hundreds of political jurisdictions, that what happens is they end up competing against each other more than us coming together in order to compete against the world.
Competing against the world. That's the challenge facing Northeast Ohio, and Voices and Choices is hoping our citizens can help to form some effective strategies.
The goal is to come out of Voices and Choices in about a year with an actual set of priorities that we as a region are going to rally around.
That was Fox 8's Wayne Dawson. Joining me now, you just saw her in that piece, Shara Davis, the project director for Voices and Choices. So tell us what's happened in the last 18 months to get us to this point and what's next.
Sure. Well, certainly we've been busy. Like you just heard Dave Abbott say, we've been engaging tens of thousands of people in conversations across 16 counties. We started the first part of the process by getting people to identify two things: both our assets and the challenges, the greatest challenges that people feel that we face as a region. We are now into the second part of that process, where our emphasis is on shifting from the most pressing issues that we face to some proposed solutions so that we can take action as a region.
Let's jump right into those issues. Top of mind for a lot of people is jobs. Gina Marinelli from WYTV 33 in Youngstown has that story.
Leeds World is a Pennsylvania-based company that makes promotional products. When they decided to expand, there were a number of communities that tried to lure the company and the hundreds of jobs that came with it to their community. But the city of Warren won the prize because of state, local, and regional cooperation.
We're not presenting that united front, and the companies don't want to be in a community where folks are dickering with each other. They don't want to be in a community where people are backbiting each other, because ultimately they feel that's going to come to harm them.
Mindsets have changed as well. For example, the mayor of Warren, Mike O'Brien, has served as a city councilman and a county commissioner. He's seen development deals from those perspectives. Youngstown's Mayor Jay Williams has served as director of community development. Both can see the bigger picture.
I'm willing to, risk not being elected if it means that in 4 years from now we've done some things regionally that are for the betterment of not only the city of Youngstown, but the Mahoning Valley.
What's good for the Valley is good for their cities, because people do drive to work. They drive into the cities and they drive out of the cities to work. And so you want to have a community where people want to live, as well as a community that companies want to set up shop.
The world is changing. It's now a global economy and a global marketplace. Communities need to realize this so they can change with the times and not get left behind.
Cleveland, by our standards, is a large city. But Cleveland, when it competes with the Ruhr Valley in Germany or other regions of the world, is a small entity. It needs to draw on the resources of Akron, of Canton, of Youngstown, Warren. It needs us all to be acting together.
Gina Marinelli reporting.
Northeast Ohio lags behind the national average in new business openings and entrepreneurship. Many blame high taxes, rising health care, and energy costs. Shara Davis from Voices and Choices once again here. Have your discussions with people throughout Northeast Ohio produced any new ideas on how to create more and better jobs?
As a matter of fact, they have. There's a whole slew of solutions out there, options for people to consider. A couple of them, just to give some examples to whet the appetite for what these ideas look like. A couple of them involve support for entrepreneurs, for new small business development within Northeast Ohio. That was something that we heard an awful lot about in the conversations. So an example is to pool regional funds, create a regional fund that specifically focuses on investing financial resources in the startup of new small businesses. Another example is supporting some of the organizations that already exist, things like Jumpstart here in the greater Cleveland area, GLIDE, the Great Lakes Innovation and Development Enterprise out in Lorain County. Those organizations are specifically set up to provide the support, the space, the technical assistance that people need to take a new idea and make that into a very prosperous business. And then, of course, there's a set of options to address some of those rising costs to business like you described. For example, one of the more innovative solutions that's out there is to do something similar to what the state of Maine did in creating a universal health care system for the state of Ohio. That's one example of an option.
And we've heard about some of that in the campaigns that have come up. You can play a role in identifying what we should do to overcome jobs and other regional challenges by participating in Voices and Choices. Go online to cast your vote about what actions we should take through an interactive survey called a Choice Book at www.voiceschoices.org, or by ordering a paper version of the survey at 1-800-929-2319. You can also register to participate in a regional town meeting that will engage hundreds of citizens from across the region in Akron on September 16th. Just about every day, you can watch or listen to a newscast or read a newspaper and learn about the problems with funding education in our region. Here's Channel 3's Tom Barris.
It's been a broken record once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. The state Supreme Court's declared Ohio's school funding system is illegal and told lawmakers fix it, but they haven't, which means schools still depend on property taxes. This August, taxed out Northeast Ohio voters rejected all 7 levies asking new money, with voters like Jackson Township's Wally Golding saying,
"We're being taxed to death. It seems like it's a never-ending battle."
Frustrated school officials forced to make painful cuts caught in a crunch.
We've been asked to do more, and more funding has been taken away.
Worrying about money takes time that should be spent on planning education.
That's an enormous amount of time and energy that could have been devoted to leadership of academic programs.
Experts in government finance agree Ohio's school funding equation's a tangled mess. This map shows how unequal Ohio's property tax formula is. Blue areas get above average state funds. Deep red funding shows funding way below average. You can see have and have not contrast between wealthy areas and poor, often rural communities. poor schools not producing college-ready graduates for tomorrow's jobs, groups have tried to rally grassroots crusades.
When the governor fails, when the legislature fails, then it's up to the people to correct the situation.
Now, some big city mayors and superintendents are trying to work out a plan to put in front of voters next November that delivers the money, is fair, reliable, and less painful to voters.
Is a system that gets off of the property tax and is shifted to either sales and/or income tax. It rises a little bit as inflation, and we get it off of the backs of the people who can least afford it.
Wally Golding thinks.
I think that we need help from the state of Ohio.
But should the region organize its own funding plan that leads to better, more accountable schools? It's a key question at the top of any comeback agenda. Northeast Ohio's future may depend on it. Tom Barris, Channel 3 News.
Education is definitely a hot topic. Shar Davis, tell us a little bit about the ideas that have emerged on education from the Voices and Choices initiative.
Well, really, there's two sets of conversations. You just heard in the news report the emphasis on public school finance and funding and accountability. But there's a second component, a second set of options around broader workforce development that have begun to surface within the region. In terms of the school finance, just to give you again a couple of examples of some options. One is certainly to advocate and put dramatic pressure from Northeast Ohio on the state legislature to change, in fact, how schools are funded. Another option would be to put pressure on the state to fund pre-kindergarten and early childhood education, again, with the emphasis being on providing the resources that all students need everywhere to succeed. But within the workforce development realm, the broader workforce development realm, there's another set of options. One of the things that people talked an awful lot about was college accessibility and affordability. And of course, today we've had the recent report released where we received an F in that realm. And one of the things, again, that we have the option of doing is pressuring the state to increase funding for higher education. Another example is to invest in more programs in Northeast Ohio that allow high school students to earn college credits while they're still at the high school level. Things like post-secondary enrollment options or the newer early college high schools which are starting to pop up across the region. So again, just a couple of examples in the education realm.
We now turn our attention to the subject of income equality in our region. But when it comes to economic prosperity and equality in Ohio, unfortunately, race matters. Experts say local economies flourish when more people from different backgrounds live in the same neighborhoods. But here it is a different story. As Ted Henry from News Channel 5 reports, we often remain divided between East and West, black and white, rich and poor.
Walk the streets of downtown Cleveland and you will see the many faces of Northeastern Ohio working and often socializing together. But living together is a different story. When it's time to go home, Greater Cleveland, like many other places in Northeast Ohio, becomes a tale of two cities, one predominantly white and affluent, the other mostly black and poor.
We're more racially segregated than other sort of major metropolitan areas. I think it's a lot more about residential choice than it is about the job loss in industry.
That choice, commonly referred to as white flight, is costing Northeast Ohio the increased population growth and prosperity seen in regions of similar size, where people are not as racially or economically isolated. More than any other indicator, economists say racial inclusion is more strongly correlated with job growth, regional productivity, and income equality.
Places that have more of an exclusion of certain minority groups or an exclusion of some poor populations have a harder time getting their whole economy to progress.
East Cleveland was a good place to live, a good place to raise your family, top schools, good police protection, fire, and all of that's gone.
East Cleveland is one of the areas hardest hit by white flight. The number of African Americans living in Cleveland's oldest suburb grew substantially by the 1960s. Pastor David Hunter of East Cleveland's Bright Star Missionary Baptist Church purchased his home in 1967.
Thought I was moving into an integrated neighborhood. My neighbors welcomed me. I went to Mississippi for about a week. When I came back, half of them were gone that welcomed me. Okay, so that tells you something that people don't always share with you.
Experts and concerned residents hope more cooperation between the city and the suburbs will close the racial gap, increase population growth, and create opportunities for everyone in northeastern Ohio. Otherwise, the region will be frozen in time, becoming the land that prosperity forgot.
Places that have had less growth in terms of their total population are likely to reflect the patterns of, earlier years.
See, we have to understand that we all need each other. We all got to make it together, or we all continue to go down together.
That was Ted Henry from News Channel 5. And by the way, there is currently a large income gap in Ohio, with the top 10% of residents making 4 times as much as the bottom 10%. Shara Davis, the project director from Voices and Choices. Let's talk about solutions with this with regard to racial isolation. What are some solutions?
Well, you really have 2 overall sets of options. One is to take neighborhoods where people are relegated, isolated from education, jobs, more affordable housing, and take businesses and education to those neighborhoods. So one of the options that we have is to provide incentives for businesses to relocate into distressed areas. The other side of that is to take people that are relegated to specific neighborhoods and move them out into the broader population. So another option might be, for example, to invest in affordable housing that's integrated, that's scattered, that's not based in specific neighborhoods or within specific developments, isolated again from all that others have and enjoy within this region.
But we're dealing with a situation of rich and poor here in terms of racial isolation, largely.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, people referred to it most often throughout the region as this huge gap between haves and have-nots in this region. You can play a role in identifying what we should do to overcome our region's challenges by participating in Voices and Choices. Go online to cast your vote about what actions we should take through an interactive survey called a Choice Book at www.voiceschoices.org or by ordering a paper version of the survey at 1-800-929-2319. You can also register to participate in a regional town meeting that will engage hundreds of citizens from across the region in Akron on September 16th.
We need help from the state of Ohio.
Better services, looking for better schools, and lower taxes.
We are in competition with other communities.
We're all joined at the hip.
It's not Cleveland competing against Akron.
We're not presenting that united front.
In 4 years from now, we've done some things regionally.
It's up to the people to correct the situation.
You're watching Make Your Choice, a half-hour special identifying problems in Northeast Ohio and searching for the best solutions. The Voices and Choices Project is bringing thousands of Ohioans together, listening to concerns and ideas on how to strengthen our region. Television stations throughout Northeast Ohio have joined forces to produce this program and through their efforts, get you involved in the search for answers. Our next topic deals with quality of life, specifically urban sprawl. Many of us are spreading out all across the region, but Northeast Ohio's population remains flat. People are moving further away from downtown areas. Core cities are suffering, and suburbs and rural communities are forced to deal with rapid development. Harry Boomer from 19 Action News explains.
Cleveland, on the shores of Lake Erie. About 15 miles west, Crocker Park, the latest example of urban development or sprawl. Between here and there, thousands of homes, many older stock homes in what is called the inner ring suburbs. But it is the new houses, retail, roads, and infrastructure that fuels Cleveland's outward migration. Once a city of nearly 1 million people, Cleveland dwindling now, projected to fall under 400,000 residents by 2007.
We certainly have seen a lot of the urban growth occurring. Largely, we have a lot of migration from the adjoining counties, primarily Cuyahoga County, some from Summit.
Medina County Commissioner Steve Hambley says 53% of the people living there don't work there.
They're looking for better services, looking for better schools, and lower taxes, which by and large Medina County has.
Sprawl, a decades-old trend, started by white flight, followed by black flight. Those who could leave did. now a new motivation.
It's not even the old middle class, as it used to be many years ago when my parents moved here in the 50s. The working class working at the Chevy and the Ford plants, these are the ones that are basically in the service industry. They're earning very, very good incomes, two-income families, and they're buying higher-priced homes.
Oh, I think it's a problem.
Kathleen Seitzo says the 12.5 square mile Brunswick Township is losing its rural nature, not like it was when she moved there.
We're the second fastest growing township in Medina County year to date.
Turning east of Cleveland to Bedford, same problem. This is what happens when people leave and businesses follow.
As an inner ring suburb, we're in competition with other communities.
Bedford Mayor Don Posick sees promise of rebirth. His city close to inking a deal with Walmart to build the world's largest supercenter at Northville and Rockside Roads, adding 350 jobs by the summer of '07.
Everything's pointing toward the redevelopment of the inner ring suburbs. People like living in an urban area. It's very convenient. There's a neighborhood atmosphere to an area. I think that's a great place to live.
With fuel and land costs going up, $70,000 an acre in some places, redevelopment may be the road that leads to a more stable region. In Cleveland, Harry Boomer, 19 Action News.
Shara Davis from Voices and Choices. Sprawl is happening everywhere, not just Northeast Ohio. How do you stop it?
Well, again, this is another one of those monumental or magnificent issues where there's a whole variety of options. But just to give you an example of an option that we have that would address both enhancing the core cities as well as preserving our rural or ex-urban communities is to invest monies in the maintenance of existing infrastructure. Our older buildings and roads and sewers and water lines, and at the same time eliminate some of the subsidies that are going out for the development of new infrastructure, again, in some of those rural areas. The point being that if people don't have the water and the sewer and those types of things, they'll be less likely to move out to some of those other areas. Again, the fact is that it's costing us all more when our population isn't growing overall, and we have to cover the costs of both old and new infrastructure. This is also an area where we have a variety of options relative to regional planning and cooperation. One of the options might be to bring together the metropolitan planning organizations of the region, the Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Agency that involves 5 counties, or what's referred to as NEFCO that involves another 4 counties within our region. And one of the options is to bring all of those organizations together so that there's regional planning and cooperation around transportation and housing and all of those things. Another option is we don't have a regional land use plan. Many communities have their own plans, but we don't have one as a region. So again, just another example out there.
Speaking of the region, regionalism is a hot buzzword these days, and many believe it's the key to Northeast Ohio's economic reinvigoration. But what is regionalism? And with so many different counties and cities and suburbs in our region, how can we all cooperate? Fox 8's Wayne Dawson shows us why we better learn how.
Regional cooperation. Experts say it's the key to survival in the world economy. Areas not just competing as cities, but as regions, something many say is not happening here in Northeast Ohio.
We're like a football team that doesn't huddle, doesn't call plays. We just run around out there.
Dave Abbott is the head of Voices and Choices, an effort aimed at improving our region's future.
It's not Cleveland competing against Akron or Cleveland competing against Pittsburgh. It's the Northeast Ohio region competing against the Pittsburgh region and the Beijing region and the Berlin region.
Mark Rosenthrop is the Dean of the College of Urban Affairs at Cleveland State University.
We have to sit down together and realize we're all joined at the hip.
Regionalization is a concept that's already working in places like Indianapolis, Indiana. With about 1.7 million people, the region is about half the size of Northeast Ohio, but economically, they have learned to work together. 5 years ago, the city of Indianapolis, its suburbs, along with area businesses, set up the Indy Partnership.
Closing a lot of deals that bring jobs to our region.
Gordon Henry is the Director of Economic Development for the city of Indianapolis.
The city of Indianapolis partners with the Indy Partnership, along with the other counties that are part of the Indy Partnership, to do a few things. Number one, to go out and market our region as a place to do business, market our assets, and try to bring businesses to our community and also assist the businesses that are here in our community grow.
Over the past 5 years, the Indy Partnership has lured Norwood Promotions products from Austin, Texas. and it has assisted in the expansion of local companies like FedEx, Eli Lilly, and the Simon Property Group.
This regional economic development strategy is really founded upon the notion that with a rising tide, all the boats rise. And so we're all in it together. And the suburban communities recognize that you cannot be a suburb of nothing.
Regionalization, it's an idea that's working in Indianapolis, but will it happen here in Northeast Ohio? Some say our economic future depends on it.
The question to us is not how do we become great? We are great. The question is how do we use these assets a little more strategically as we focus on the future? We have to understand that when the city of Cleveland grows, the region grows.
There are more than 700 political jurisdictions in Northeast Ohio alone. We are a fragmented community. Shara Davis from Voices and Choices, how do you bring all these government entities together and get us to cooperate?
Well, certainly this has been a huge issue for the public, not only the number of jurisdictions, but the duplication of services and the cost to individuals as taxpayers. So the solutions, the proposed solutions, focus on efficiency and effectiveness of government. One option is to consolidate, to actually consolidate governmental units, to merge counties with cities. Another option is to actually merge services or work cooperatively on those service delivery across communities. Another is to support organizations like the new Northeast Ohio Sourcing Office, which is helping communities with joint purchasing of fuel for their city vehicles or paper products or information technology services. But this is also an area where regional cooperation is of utmost importance. So there's another set of options that, for example, focus on educating the public on why it's important that we cooperate regionally for our overall economic competitiveness in the entire world. And also there's a set of options that say we as citizens can really make a difference by supporting elected officials that in fact support regional solutions themselves. So again, there's many, many different options that we have, and we've given you just a few examples. And people can really go to our choice books online at our website to really look at a more detailed view of the pros and cons of some of these various pieces.
Glad you brought that up. Now is your chance to get involved, to make your choice. You can play a role in identifying what we should do to overcome our region's challenges by participating in Voices and Choices. Go online to cast your vote about what actions we should take through an interactive survey called a choice book at www.voiceschoices.org. Or you can order a paper version of the survey at 1-800-929-2319. You can also register to participate in a regional town meeting that will engage hundreds of citizens from across the region in Akron on September 16th. Thanks for joining us. And thanks, Shara Davis from Voices and Choices, for joining us here as well. It was very interesting to hear about all the things that you have to offer on the website.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks to all the television stations in Northeast Ohio who helped produce this program. Thank you for getting involved in making your choice.